Welcome to this edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week show. Colin Cowherd silenced on ESPN Radio. Rob Manfred tickles down under. It's Hall of Fame weekend and a whole lot more on this edition of MLB This Week show. It's time for another edition of MLB This Week, the MLB This Week podcast. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary.
And Gary, welcome back to the show. We had last week off, and God, it feels like a ton of news has piled up on us here.
We certainly did, Rich. And last week I was at the ballpark, and that's why I couldn't do the show. We went to a Brooklyn Cyclones game, so an exciting game, and had a great time. So, always great to be at the ballpark, but that's why I wasn't here.
Yes, it is, and we enjoyed our little post-All-Star break there. And how'd you enjoy that game, by the way, the All-Star game, Gary?
Well, the National League lost, but I did enjoy the Jacob deGrom inning. That was fun, striking out the sides. It was okay. I still, I don't know. It's still kind of a yawner at times. A little quicker this year, so that was good. Home run derby was faster, so that was good. But, it is their big showcase game, and that's okay.
Yes, it is. And, I agree with you. I thought the game was a well-paced game. I like Jacob deGrom as well. Did a wonderful job in there. He really has don't see him all that much, so it was nice to see deGrom and a couple of the other players, especially from the American League, that I don't get a chance to see all that much. But, yeah, all in all, a great time. And now it seems like it's a race to the finish line here with probably 60-some-odd games to go to the end of the season.
And, of course, it's the first stumbling block, or the first milestone, if you will, is a race to the trading deadline, and some teams pulling deals already, Rich, as we speak. Johnny Cueto got traded today to the Royals, and the Mets pulled the deal, brought in a couple of veteran hitters in Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson and other guys. David Price, is he going to be the next pitcher to go? It's going to be an interesting week. It always is when trading deadlines around, so we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yes, we will. News comes through the wire fast on this, and one of the players that is on the radar of a lot of teams possibly is Cole Hamels, and Mr. Cole Hamels here pitched a no-hitter yesterday against the Chicago Cubs, of course.
And that was exciting, and especially the last out was a little nerve-wracking. It looked like the center fielder, Herrera, I believe his name is, almost misplayed the ball, but was able to sort of dive back or dive forward, I guess, and catch it to preserve that no-hitter. And good for him. Great job. Always great to see something like that in a game of baseball.
Yeah, it almost looked like he was affected by the ghosts of Wrigley there. That ball was carrying well. It almost looked like it was going to be out of the ballpark. Chris Bryant hit it, I believe. And, as you said, he scrambled to the warning track, and then he left himself a little short, so he had to dive forward for the ball. One of the all-time great recoveries there from Odubel, and they had some great pictures after the game with Cole Hamels grabbing Odubel and thanking him for that great catch, and he returned the favor. So just a great time. Always better when you win, of course, with the Phillies. But I brought on the show here on the video portion of the show anyway. Today's headline from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm not sure if our reader or listeners on YouTube can see that, but The Philadelphia Inquirer views this as a parting gift from Cole Hamels, as if they think that he's going to be moved at this trade deadline, which is only 5 days away now, on July 31st, 2015. So a lot of the sports papers here around the Philadelphia area thinking Hamels will be moved. I'm probably one of the minority that maybe he will not get moved, is what I'm thinking.
Well, the rumors aren't as strong that the Rangers and the Dodgers are the favorites to land him. So we'll have to see how that works out. The Phillies are, I'm sure, talking to other teams about him and see who they get the best deal. And, at this point, it'd probably be a good thing to move him. And coming off a no-hitter, what better time to trade somebody? And, if they can get enough to really boost their team and get them back into prominence, I think they'll do it.
Yeah, and of course, David Price still out there on the market. A big ace looking for a new team. Jonathan Papelbon, probably one of the best closers in the game, still available from the Phillies. The Mets have discussed trading Zach Wheeler. I know you're probably more up to date on that, Gary.
They have discussed that, and I don't know who's gonna. He's recovering from Tommy John surgery. It's not available till next season, and probably midway through next season. So, but it would be a good take for somebody, and get somebody now. And the Mets are going to try to go for it. So,
and as you said, the Mets on your podcast, Mets Musings, your other show, well-respected Mets podcast there, you implored the general manager to go out there and get some hitters, and he finally did, and they've already paid dividends for the Mets.
Yeah, they have. Not exactly the big bats that everybody was looking for, the stars, but what he did was he brought in, as I said earlier, Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson. And while, there's no big wow factor with them, they are two solid veteran bats and something they were lacking. And it immediately helped them at least strengthen the bench, because the bench was pretty horrible. And, of course, Kelly Johnson started yesterday. He had a home run and got another hit. And Juan Uribe went in late last night as he pinched hit and stayed in the game at third base, made a beautiful diving stop. So he's paid some dividends. And today he won the game with a long single off the wall. He only gets credit with a single, but a lot of people thought it went out, but the replay shows it hit below the line. So he gets credit for a single, but he's looks like a good influence. It's tough after 2 days to say what kind of influence, but everybody has said he's a great teammate, and he seems to be always smiling. And sometimes you need that when you have a mix of young veterans and younger players. And he may be a good mix for this team, much like Marlon Byrd was a couple of years ago. Now it's a different, another step forward. So we'll see how it pays off. The Mets are still looking for a bigger name, I guess. Reports have floated about Jay Bruce and Cespedes from Detroit and a number of other people, but we'll see what somebody's willing to offer and what they'll take.
That's for sure. That's the whole game in a nutshell. Who's going to pick up the salaries and assume all that debt and take on these players? So we'll have to see what happens. We'll have a lot more of that talk on our next show, MLB This Week, the independent podcast brought to you every week here by myself and Gary Mack. And Gary, one of the ESPN radio talk show hosts this past week has found himself semi-unemployed. He was due to jump ESPN in about a week anyway and go over to Fox with his show. I don't know if you could call him a fellow podcaster, but he's definitely a kind of a respected sports show host, Mr. Colin Cowherd. got into backed himself into a corner with some comments he made about specifically the Dominican Republic when talking about baseball and the complexity of the game, and just unfortunate comments there by him, and it sort of found a huge backlash following him.
Yeah, it certainly did, Rich. And as you say, ESPN, I read somewhere that they're actually hurting for revenue. So they've been trying to get rid of. They got rid of Oberman, and now Calvin however you say it, Cowherd. But he didn't help his own matters at all by the comments that he made, and I have not heard the tape, and I've read some transcripts, but suffice it to say, now in this day and age, we're so politically correct, and you can't criticize anything. So he made a big mistake, and we'll see what Fox does about it. There's been no word on any actions they might take. They might just ignore it and say, well, he said that with ESPN, and tell him keep it cool with the news show. And sometimes, it'll get more people to listen to the news show because they want to see if he's going to say something stupid again. So you never know with these things.
Of course, his show and his followers are known as the Herd. I'm not a big fan of his. I've heard his show over the past few years, but I'm not a big fan. But, a lot of these talk show hosts, they do so much talk. They get themselves backed into a corner sometimes, but I don't really think that he said all that bad of a comment to inherit all of this terrible commentary about him.
Well, perhaps we should say what he said. I don't have it in front of me, but it's just the way we're getting in this country. It's a shame that you can't criticize certain aspects of society anymore because we're very big on labels now, and anything you say or do has to have a label on it instead of just an opinion, whether it's stupid or not. It's still your opinion. You should have the right to say it. But we're very big on labels now, and it's kind of sad in a way because it's not the country that I grew up in, and now we're turning into a political show almost. So,
yeah, and I actually considered having some of the comments that he made to air on our show tonight, but I figured I would just let it go. If you want to find that out, you can go right to ESPN.com, search under Cowherd, Cowherd, and you can find that tape. But like I said, I've been all over social media sites with this, and a lot of people don't find that what he said was all that bad. And, if you take one or two things out of context and then blow it up into a big something that it's not, it's very easy to try to sway corporate entities these days with that stuff. And that's just my opinion. I don't really think he was out to disrespect people. He probably would have chosen better words, possibly, but for lack of better reason, did not. So we're just passing this story along to our listeners here. But you have a kind of a hilarious story next up here, Gary, that I didn't really see during the week either.
Well, Rich, if you watch the All-Star game, that there's MVP, of course, after the game, and the commissioner gives out a trophy, and the trophy is it's a crystal baseball bat. Well, Rob Manfred was giving out the trophy, and of course, at the time, Erin Andrews of Fox was nearby. And, well, let's just show the video and see. You can see he kind of taps her totally innocently in a sensitive area, shall we say. and she stepped back and kept her composure and kept going with the interview. But I just thought it was kind of funny that Rob is first All-Star game. I guess he's not used to holding that trophy and got to be just a tad more careful. Either that or she needs to get a longer microphone. I don't know which it is, but and of course the pictures made the rounds, and
yeah, I think for our podcast listeners, you might want to tune into the video for that. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I don't want to go into a lot of description on it. This is a family show, but and anyway, any excuse to show Erin Andrews on video or in pictures is good enough for me. So
that's for sure. So very interesting there. I did not see that during the week, and of course, Rob Manfred making the rounds for other reasons as well throughout baseball. He's proposing several changes in the game, all of which who haven't been all that well received by fans. Most recently, Manfred's been saying that the trade deadline should be moved back from where it currently is, and a lot of people just don't buy those opinions. Here's a couple comments right off of Facebook here from ESPN Baseball Tonight. They posted this on their Facebook feed about Manfred wanting the trade deadline moved back. Want to change something? Let Pete Rose back into baseball. Got 183 likes under this one specific post here. And another Facebook fan here says, is there anything about the MLB he does like? So that's an interesting comment as well.
Well, I think, Rich, there are things that need to be changed in the game, and one of them is probably to get rid of the designated hitter, but he's not going to do that. That's my thing. But, it's a hard thing. It's such a pure game. It's such a game of purists, but is it really? I mean, everything changes. Uniforms have changed. Playoffs have changed. Certain things you have to look at, and I think what he's doing is he's setting out a broad agenda. And he's almost like just throwing it out there and throwing it against the wall, see what's going to stick. And some of it's not well liked, and some of it's going to be liked. I don't like the idea of the trading deadline getting pushed back because, and I understand the point. The point is more teams might fall out of it, and there'll be more trades made, perhaps. This way, people don't know, do they trade or they don't trade. You got to know both by now. I mean, you seriously got to know. By the time the trading deadline, you're going to be well into 100 games. You're gonna have 60, 58 games left. Can you pull a miracle and go 57-0 for some of these teams? I mean, we all know Detroit's not getting back into it. I don't think Cleveland's out of it. I mean, even with the wild cards, it's just I think you keep it and you hope for the best. I mean, it used to be June 15th. Remember those days?
I don't really remember that trade deadline. No.
Oh, well, I do. I'm old, and I do remember it. And I don't know. It just he's got some good ideas. He's got some bad ideas, and it's all going to have to shake itself out. He's emphasizing a lot of trying to get youth and inner city kids back into the game. That's a good thing. I actually think that the 154 game schedule might be a good thing. He's looking at expansion, 2 teams. I think that may be a good thing. Let's move a team to Montreal and, move Tampa Bay to Charlotte or San Antonio, or move Tampa Bay to Montreal, and let's get a team in San Antonio or Charlotte or something, somewhat that area, and let's do away with interleague play.
Yeah, well, that's another thing to come up. But it just seems like, is he doing too much too soon? We seem to not hear too much out of the former commissioner, but yet this commissioner's only been in for 7 months here, and already he's turning the game upside down, so to speak.
But has he really done anything about it? You know what I mean? It's like he's just throwing these ideas out there, and I'm sure they're going to discuss some of these things when they have the meetings and all of that sort of thing. But maybe he's just aiming high to try to get something else. You know what I mean? He could be, just like I say, throwing out a lot of stuff because he wants to get one thing done. And
hoping something sticks on that wall.
Exactly. And I think you've got to give him some time to see where it all goes. He's certainly being aggressive about it, and maybe that's not a bad thing.
So we'll see how Manfred continues to navigate his way through the changes that may be coming to Major League Baseball soon. But this weekend, Gary, we had a great weekend for baseball lovers of all years of the game, and the Hall of Fame weekend was this weekend.
Certainly was, and terrific. And too bad the class was missing one terrific player in Mike Piazza, but that's another story for another day. I think we've already killed that one, and hopefully he'll be on the stage next year. But class went in, Craig Biggio and John Smoltz and Pedro Martinez, and the big unit, Randy Johnson, went in. So some nice speeches, and I don't know if they're going to repeat it tonight. It was on MLB Network. Don't know if they're going to repeat it. I'm sure they will sometime this week. But congratulations to those four guys.
Yeah, from the previous year, I don't think anybody went into the Hall last year. Am I correct on that?
Well, you had the managers go in last year. You had Bobby Cox and Joe Torre and Tony La Russa went in. No players. Well, they were players. I mean, but they essentially went in as managers.
Yeah, which is rare for baseball, but they seem to have made up with it this year.
Sorry. Sorry to cut you up, but didn't Frank Thomas win in last year?
Did he? It wasn't.
And did Tom Glavine go? I think they had. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Maddox, Glavine, Thomas. So maybe it was the year before that, 2013.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was the year before that. But I think they don't want to make it like football. I would lower it to 60% of the vote or something, or 65 instead of the 75. It's kind of tough, but these guys got in. So, and what do you think about this class?
I think three-fourths of them deserve to be there. I had a little discussion with a friend of mine over the week about Craig Biggio. He was very surprised that Craig Biggio was going in the Hall of Fame. I had mentioned to him that, it was Hall of Fame weekend coming up, and he took a step back. Craig Biggio, he's a player that sort of is on that fringe of Hall of Fame type caliber. And at least for my buddy, who is a major baseball fan himself, he just didn't agree that Craig Biggio was a Hall of Fame player.
Well, I kind of wondered that myself when it, more or less came down to him and Piazza, how he beat Piazza in. But, when you do look at the numbers are pretty good. He's got the 3,000 hits. He started as a catcher, played second base, played center field. He won Gold Gloves at I don't know if he won at multiple positions, but he did win at second. So 20 years with a franchise, really meant a lot to the franchise. So sometimes you don't always have to have the numbers, but he had the golden number of 3,000 hits, and usually if you get that and 500 home runs, you're in. used to be 300 wins for pitchers, but Pedro Martinez didn't have 300 wins. So Randy Johnson had 303 wins, so he got in. So I don't know. It's I guess because Biggio never won a World Series, and maybe that's the one thing that people would hold, but neither did Ernie Banks, and he was a no-brainer to go in. So I don't really have a lot of problems other only that it took Mike Piazza out. So maybe a vote for Biggio would have went to Piazza that would have got Piazza in. And I certainly think Piazza deserves to be in.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that the Hall of Fame voters, we know they're baseball writers, didn't mix up Piazza with the steroid scandal as well. So we can say one thing. If Piazza does not get in next year, there's a big reason for that. And I think the baseball writers themselves will be putting him in the class of the steroid class if he does not get in next year.
Well, I tend to agree with you, but then why isn't Biggio in that class? He played in that same time frame.
He never had the rumors of the steroid scandal like Piazza has.
But the big rumor about Piazza is a lot of main thing that I've heard is the one writer in New York that says he had pimples on his back and acne on his back, and that's a sure sign of steroid abuse. And in his book, he writes that he had acne in his back when he was 12. So was he taking steroids then? I mean, I don't know. I think we have to look at this seriously and say, if he never got caught. Is it right to keep? I can't believe I'm saying this, but is it right to keep a guy like Roger Clemens out? I mean, yes, he did it. We all know he did, even though he never got caught, and he even beat it in court in a court of law. Yet they'll keep him out. And really, was he not a great pitcher before?
Yeah. That's just like A-Rod. A-Rod was a great player from the time he came into the league, but then that taintedness follows you. It's almost like a Bonds. Bonds was a great player before all these players discovered the steroids as a way to prolong their career and keep them healthy. I don't think they actually did it initially with the intent of, I'm going to be the greatest player that ever was with these steroids. I think they did it more or less as a sign of the times, because it was a thing that not only baseball players were doing, but people in local gyms around where you live. In every corner of America or around the world, we're getting in on this stuff. It made the fitness rounds, so to speak. A friend of mine who I would never think would take any substance to alter himself actually discovered steroids in a gym back around the same time, and he used to talk to me about it, and I just shake my head and wonder about him. But that's the kind of effect and reach that these steroids had on people.
And a lot of this, I remember McGuire, one of the things that he got caught with, they said, well, he had to stuff the powder in the back. Remember the one interview they did? I don't know where it was, and he had some powder. Maybe it was after one of the big home runs he hit. But that powder, whatever the name of it is, escapes me now. But that was legal at the time in Major League Baseball. And that wasn't really, that was one of these supplements. And they still take these supplements. They're still legal. They're not steroids per se. But do they, anything, Gatorade, they say, helps for your performance. So is that performance enhancing? Is Advil performance enhancing? I mean, they shoot these guys with cortisone so they can play. You know what I'm saying? And I understand the difference. Steroids are illegal. But are we being it gets back to the whole issue again with with Pete Rose and the gambling, and yet they're advocating DraftKings all over the place.
Yeah.
So are we in such a I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it seems to me like there's a lot of hypocrisy around here. And, for years, sports writers were known for going out and getting drunk. That's not helping their performance, but they're not exactly saints either.
Exactly.
And I'm sure there's still some smoke, and there's still like enjoy a few adult beverages now and then. So they're not saints either. So, perhaps, and I understand the traditions of the game and the purity of the game, but we know that these guys did stuff. So
And that's true.
and we know it affected the game. And I mean, even Pedro Martinez said, what did he say? 80% of the guys or 60% of the guys were on it in his day and age. So we don't know who was not on it, who was on it. We don't know what pitchers were on it. We don't know if Clemens was on it. We don't know if Pedro Martinez was on it. We don't know if Nolan Ryan was on it. We don't know who was on it and who wasn't. So I think at this point, I think you just have to vote on the guys, and you can put on it played in the era known as the steroid era if you want to, if there's got to be a distinguishing factor somewhere. But I don't think you can, because some guy's got acne on his back, and then they go back to the whole thing where he was drafted like 600 in the draft or something, the 666 guy taken. Well, let me tell you one thing about that story. I played with a guy, and I'm not going to give out his name because I don't know if he gets embarrassed about this, but I played against a guy that was drafted in the first round by the St. Louis Cardinals in I can't remember the year now, but anyway, he was drafted, and I think with I'm going to say the 10th pick or the 7th pick in the nation, right? In that same draft, in that same year, and people can look it up if they're that interested. A guy was drafted, I believe, in the 47th round, who turned out to be a pretty good ball player, and his name was Keith Hernandez. So, I mean, you can find gems. There are stars in the back end of these drafts, and this guy that I played against never made it past. He made it to AAA. Couldn't hit a curveball, and a terrific guy and a great hitter. I mean, he could hit anything else. That he was a pretty slick fielding first baseman, but he got beat out by a slicker fielder first baseman that could hit, and maybe wanted it more. Who knows? But to say, well, this guy was drafted late and this guy was drafted. How many first round guys never make it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't go as an argument for me. A lot of times it's in your head. It can be a mental game, and that jump is up to you as an individual and in your head. If you say to yourself, I'm a big leaguer, I can play in this game at any level, you know what? You're going to have a better chance than some guy that's a 5-tool player, but always has, in the back of his mind, oh, can I play at this level? They're not going to make it. It's going to be the guy that's a 3-tool player, but it works hard and says, I can knock down that door, and I can steal second. I can take like a Pete Rose.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's not easy.
It's not easy, and it's a lot of it's mental. And, suffice it to say, they've I don't know what you do with the steroid era guys, but I'm even getting to the point where I really believe it's not fair.
So we'll have to see what baseball does, and specifically the baseball writers of America do with baseball. And another thing that isn't really talked about all that much, Gary, is they're two separate entities. The Baseball Hall of Fame is like a privately funded organization that's a charitable organization. that isn't funded by baseball. So they're in effect two different entities, and they're not beholden to one another. Even with the Pete Rose scandal about him coming back into baseball, it was noted that that doesn't mean that he would automatically become a Hall of Famer either, even if he is allowed back into baseball in some capacity. So there's so many gray areas still left to be overturned in this. We'll have to see what happens in the future.
You're 100% right, Rich. It's just we'll have. Pardon me. We have to wait and see.
Well, one Hall of Famer that was a manager of a baseball team has been revealed that something to the public that may not have been known by fans outside of the Philadelphia area.
Well, Rich, yeah, I mean, shockingly, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now. Hall of Famer Ryan Sandberg was managing the Phillies, and he resigned, and he shocked plenty of people, and even those that were close to him. Bench coach Larry Bowa admitted he was surprised when Sandberg announced he would be leaving, and Bowa recently told CSNPhilly.com that the reason for Sandberg's resignation may have been tied to his belief that players did not respect him as a manager. And he went on to say that several pitchers, Hamels, A.J. Burnett, Kyle Kendrick, and David Buchanan, openly disrespected Sandberg during visits to the mound last season. Boa said Sandberg addressed that with the pitchers in spring training. But I guess it was just an overall feeling that they weren't. And, you know, I remember a game last year where Chase Utley actually went to the mound. And I don't remember if Sandberg came out to the mound and Utley went. And then when Sandberg left, Utley was telling everybody what to do. And it was like completely different from what it seemed as if Sandberg was telling him to do. So apparently there was a lot of disharmony there. And I guess, you know, according to Larry Bowa, he felt that that Sandberg lost the clubhouse and was disrespected. And he didn't have a strong pedigree as a major league manager, but usually you got a Hall of Famer coming in there. That's gonna and a guy that played for a number of years in a Hall of Famer. You would think that would garner respect to the players, and maybe it's a condemnation of the current generation of players or whatever. That how can you not respect the guy that played the game and at the level he played at? It just kind of boggles my mind, but apparently that's what happened.
Yeah, and Boa went on to specifically mention veteran players, but it wasn't only veteran players. We had some comments made right after Ryan Sandberg abruptly announced his resignation to the Phillies and to the fans. Nobody knew it was coming, not even his closest friend, Larry Bowa. But Ben Revere had mentioned that, you know, maybe he wasn't cut out to be a manager right after Ryan Sandberg left the team. So, you know, that just shows you right there. If a guy says that right after he leaves, what did he think before he left? And, you know, I think you're absolutely right. He probably did lose some of the players on the team as far as their loyalty to him and possibly the game itself. There was some real bad play going on the field. I don't even think he was tough enough on those players.
Maybe that's what it was. You know, I don't know. And quite frankly, who's Ben Revere to be criticizing who's manager and who's not? You know what I mean?
Exactly. He's a young player himself, but yeah, those comments right after, most players were very diplomatic about it and said, you know, they wish him the best, so on and so forth. But yeah, Ben Revere came out and just laid it all out on the line, so to speak. And you got to think that maybe more of those type of comments existed.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's really kind of a shame, you know. I mean, as you say, but you know, in a way, though, you know, hindsight's 2020, and I can remember him at games at Citi Field, and he just never looked comfortable in
Yeah.
the dugout. And I don't know if you know, I don't know if you've never noticed that when they showed him in Veterans Stadium. Listen to me. You know, at home games,
Citizens Bank
what?
Park. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I guess losing can do that to you. I mean, he cited losing for the reason that he left the team, but also another reason in the background was a new hire that the Phillies were going to announce, and they did announce it 2 days after he left. A new president of the Phillies is going to be on board next year, which is odd that they would announce it at the time they did. Why not make him the president right now? 2 days after Sandberg left.
Yeah. Or wait till the off season.
And that was a guy that passed him up for a manager's job in Chicago with the Cubs for many years and kept him down under over there. So why would he want to even stick around if this Andy McPhail, who is the Phillies going to be the president in 2016, is going to come on board and obviously didn't like Sandberg anyway. So,
well, the only thing I would say to that, though, is if, you know, then let him fire you at the end of the season, because then this just, I don't know, this doesn't look good for him himself, Sandberg.
yeah.
It looks almost like he doesn't like losing, and he just, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm getting the hell out of this. Now, it's possible he got burnt out from the losing. He does, you know, he didn't like, maybe the stress was too much of losing and not having the clubhouse in your corner and that kind of stuff. It just kind of makes it, to me, it would leave a bad taste in my mouth that he went out this way. And at least if you get fired, you get fired. But, you know, managers get fired all the time, and a lot of them come back again, unless maybe he's lost the taste for it.
That's possible also. So we'll have to keep our eyes open for Sandberg's next move. If you'd like to tune into our show, you can catch us at baseballtalkradio.com, a great spot for over 30 shows now. Just added a brand new show today, Gary, Wrigleyville Nation, a Cubs podcast.
Oh. I interviewed a guy from there whose name escapes me right now, and I apologize.
Yeah, there's 4 guys that run the podcast there. Jeremy is one of the main guys that runs the show there, Wrigleyville Nation. So if you want to tune into a whole bunch of great podcasts, including my own Phillies Talk and Gary's own show, Mets Musings, go right over to baseballtalkradio.com. You can listen to a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week radio feed, even on the road. They go through the TuneIn app rather for that one. And you can also listen to MLB This Week on Stitcher. And we're at MLBThisWeek.com right on the internet. You can leave us a comment or question. If you want to go on the show with us, send us an email. We'd love to put your comments on the show.
And I believe I had Patrick Nagel on of Wrigleyville Nation. So that's just
very cool. So, just a plethora of shows all about baseball from all over the world, as a matter of fact, from Japan, Europe. There's a big contingent in Europe that they have leagues over there that a lot of the players sometimes end up going there to try to get work, down through Australia and all. So tune into a few of the shows there. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's growing the game, isn't it? I know there's a bunch of in England. There's a bunch of fans, and oddly enough, a bunch of Met fans in England, which is good because they like to listen to Mets music. So
Yeah.
And of course, they listen to it on baseballtalkradio.com. So,
Yeah, we love them from everywhere. Well, Gary, you have a story, no home plate umpire, no problem?
well, Rich, fans have been calling for years for robot umpires and computerized strike zones. And pay attention because I believe it's Tuesday and Wednesday in two independent league games hosted by the San Rafael Pacifics. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, the Pitch FX system, which was produced by Sports Vision, will be in place for both games and will be used to determine all balls and strikes calls. No umpires. Former major leaguer and current MLB Network analyst Eric Burns will serve as the strike zone umpire for both games. He's long been a proponent for an automated strike zone, so his involvement comes as no surprise. In basic terms, his role will be to oversee the computer system and relay all balls and strike calls to the players and fans. The games are being billed as the first in professional baseball history in which a human won't call balls and strikes. They could also serve as a glimpse into baseball's future should such measures ever gain enough traction within the sport. So here's your chance, folks, to see no umpires calling balls and strikes. And it's going to be an interesting experiment to see how it works out.
Yeah, and I don't really like that. Even though I know a lot of people will say that you're going to get it right by having a computer call the balls and strikes. It's just a human game. And if you take that human aspect out of it, you're going to take more of the game away from itself and turn it into something like, I don't know, tennis, where you have the ball always being called out by a computerized system where they can tell if a ball was on a line or slightly out, rather than having the guy up in the chair do it. I just don't follow this computerization of specifically baseball.
Well, a thing I don't understand is, and it'll be interesting, but how do you take into account everybody's strike zone? Because people are tall, people are small, people are middle height. I always said if they were gonna do it, the way to do it is to stitch something within, like some kind of the what's the word I'm looking for? Something that'll read across the chest and at the knees. And then that way you could have, but how is this going to determine it unless they're going to do it with lasers or something? And when somebody gets up there, it instantly shows up their strike zone. And I don't know. I guess as a technical guy, I think I'd be fascinated by it, but I agree with you. I don't want to take the umpires out of it too much. I mean, if there was a quick way to say, to relay and use the system like this, but to tell the umpire, that was really a strike and you blew it. You know what I mean? Something like that. But we see how long some of these replays take when it's quite evident it should be 1, 2, 3.
And I think you'll still see you're splitting hairs with certain calls of strikes and balls, even with a computerized system. Did a little reading on this. Calls will be made by the Pitch FX system with 3 cameras forming a triangular effect that judges a pitch's trajectory and speed as it crosses the plate. Pitch FX is used on TV broadcasts to determine a pitcher's location and also for umpires to judge their work. So it's not a big stretch to think that what we've been seeing on ESPN on Sunday nights may have a future in baseball. And, it's a business like anything else. And it seems like the odd man out is the human being all of a sudden.
But then again, and this article doesn't touch on that, but don't you have to have somebody standing there for a play at the plate or save for an out call? I mean, how are they going to handle that if there's no umpire I mean, I guess in the future you can arrange for other things, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see from one aspect, from the technology aspect, but I don't think it's going to be anything that impacts the game, at least in our lifetime.
So technology happens fast. So I don't know about that. We'll have to see.
Well, that's true
Maybe,
too.
maybe this is just a test from Major League Baseball to see what kind of comments come out of it, what kind of controversy it stirs. So we'll definitely have another report on this in the next couple of shows. Very interesting. On one hand, I do like technology, but I don't think it should change a game in the way that technology can change certain things. And baseball itself is a human game for the most part.
Mhm.
I would hate to see it go the way of robotic and very cold and not a very human experience for sure.
Right. I agree.
So let's keep our eye out for that. And who knows? Maybe, maybe in the future. I mean, I went through the casino industry as a young man. There used to be plenty of jobs in the casino for people. As
Mhm.
technology progressed with coins being replaced in slot machines with the electronic cards and whatnot, those jobs disappeared. So, you can also do that with a number of things with vendors and things. Just have the people get their own snacks, but the idea is keep people working here.
You're gonna have you order on your phone, and it comes shooting up out of a chute to you at your seat.
Exactly. They could do it. The
Here's your hot
technology,
dog. Oh, okay.
the Jetsons now coming soon to a baseball park near you. And our last story up for this week's show, Gary, is one of my favorites. It concerns products like hats, and you have one on the most popular jerseys in
Yeah.
baseball.
The rankings for the most popular jersey rankings just came out, and this is based from the beginning of the year till the All-Star break, and based on sales, and it's from Majestic Athletic, who makes all the jerseys for the major league teams, and they base it on the sales at the MLB.com shop, and there's our list of top selling jerseys, and let me read it to you. Number one was Madison Bumgarner of the Giants. Number two, Chris Bryant. Already it jumps to number two. I mean, that's amazing. A rookie jumping up there of the Cubs, of course. Number three was Buster Posey of the Giants. Number four, Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers. Number five, Bryce Harper. So far, no surprises. Well, maybe Chris Bryant's a bit of a surprise because of his lack of years. But number six was Hunter Pence. Number seven, Mike Trout. Number eight, Matt Harvey. Number nine, David Ortiz of the Red Sox. And number 10 was Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs. So those are the top 10 selling jerseys. I could go on, but let me just say that in the top 20, David Wright is also in the top 20. Andrew McCutchen came in at number 16. Todd Frazier, number 15. Max Scherzer of the Nationals came in at number 19. And Adrian Gonzalez was number 20. And Rich, I'm sorry to say, but no Phillies in that top 20 of top selling jerseys from Majestic this year so far. So I guess Odubel Herrera and Miguel Franco haven't quite made their mark yet, but they look like some good ball players. So maybe in the future.
Yeah, and one thing that shocks me about the top 10 there is Mike Trout. I would have thought he would be higher than number 7 on the list there, but I'm not really surprised about Chris Bryant for some reason. Chicago has a lot of fans in and around the Chicago area and outside of Chicago, but yeah, I'm surprised that Trout doesn't have more nationwide followers.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and I was a little surprised at Bryant, but now that you mention it, sometimes when a guy comes up and he's highly touted, people run to the store right away and get that jersey. So, um, I guess yeah, you're right there. It's not too surprising, but it is a little surprising that Mike Trout is down so far. And it's a little surprising the background they chose for David Ortiz didn't work out too good there. But that's the Majestic Athletic jerseys, top selling jerseys so far for this season.
Very cool. And I wonder if they take into effect now, you have the authentic jerseys, which now sell for over, if you pay full price for them, $230 on the MLB.com site or your favorite home field site. Even at the stadium, the authentic jerseys are starting to creep up and get really expensive.
Well, they don't really say. It's just whatever they sell on MLB.com, and I know they do sell the replicas there as well. But
Yeah. Quite sure that's probably the replicas and the authentic.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm probably sure.
I still have my Piazza authentic 2004, or is it a 2002 Mets jersey? I'll have to dig it out and look it over, but I save it for prosperity. It was one of my favorite jerseys of all time.
There you go. And if he gets into the hall, you can wear it on a show next year.
That's right. I'll have to lose a few pounds. I think I've...
well, leave it open.
Well, that about wraps up our show for this week on MLB This Week. We hope you stay with us and listen to the show whenever you can. Listen to us on the road. You can download the TuneIn app and check out us on baseballtalkradio.com on the road. On the TuneIn app, you would just search for baseballpodcasts.net. It's his own station there on TuneIn. So, Gary, another great show, and I already am looking forward to next week's show.
Can't wait, Rich, and I'll see you then.